Like the common example I like to give, because I think it's a big problem, and I think it sets marriages on the wrong foot, is extravagant weddings. Right? Extravagant weddings we just violate all kinds of rules of Islam in doing them. So if there was any angels would not even be found in the same area because of the kinds of weddings we do. So forget barakah, forget du'as at that wedding, We completely violate those rules. And then on top of that, they're so overpriced and extravagant and over the top just because your cousin had a baller wedding, so you have to go and outdo them, right? And then the next person comes around and they have to outdo the next and the next and the next. And so it becomes a culture of competition, where one after the other, you have to compete with those who came before you. Creates a culture of oppression. People feel like they're not decent people unless they overspend. These are the chains that are placed on top of people. You know how many people put themselves in financial, emotional difficulty, all wondering, what are people going to say? Just because of that one phrase, what are people going to say? What's your aunt going to say? What's your cousin going to say? What are those guys going to say? Well, just because of reputation, that's all. The Deen came to remove us from all that stuff. All you have to worry about is what's Allah going to say. That's all you have to worry about. Everything else is fine. You'll be okay. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُخَفِّفَ عَنْكُمْ. And of course this is also the law, and this is something we're going to learn in Surah Al-Ma'idah in detail, or it will come up towards the end of Surah Al-Ma'idah in detail. But here it's important to mention also, laws are a means of purification. Us obeying Allah's law, we learn this in many sayings of the Prophet ﷺ. We do a good deed and and al-hasanat yudhibna sayyi'at, like Quran says, good deeds alleviate or remove bad deeds. Following Allah's law is an expiation for smaller sins. It gets those things out of the way, it purifies us. And so we have less burden to carry on Judgment Day. Literally, there's a heavier load for us to carry. So Allah says Allah wants to lighten your burden. Not just in dunya, but in akhirah also, you'll have less to carry. You'll have lighter baggage that came with you, as far as sins are concerned. وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. And the human being was created weak. It's beautiful that Allah mentions lightening a burden and then weakness, because a weak person can't hold a lot, can't carry a lot, right? So this parallel is made between those two things. You're weak, you can't hold that much, so I made sure I gave you something you can handle, it's easy for you. This is a continuation of what Allah said to us at the end of Al-Baqarah. لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا. No person will be Allah does not burden upon any person more than what they can hold, what they can bear, their wus'a, their capacity, right? This is all of the ahkam are within our wus'a, within our capacity. And the purpose of them is to make life easier for us. If only we saw it that way. We think of Islam, or especially someone who tries to abide by the rules of Islam, as someone who's very strict. Muslim. They're a little too Muslim. Or they'll say, that's a strict Muslim. You heard those terms? That's a strict Muslim. That's just that idea is the exact opposite of what Allah wants us to think. That guy is making his life easy. He knows what it means to live a simple life, an easy life. This is يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُخَفِّفَ عَنْكُمْ وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا وَكَذَلِكَ نَحْنُ ضَعِيفُونَ ضُعَفَاء فِي الْفَهَمِ أَيْضًا. Where we're also weak in understanding. We're weak in understanding that this makes life easier, not harder. إِن تَجْتَنِبُوا كَبَائِرَ مَا تُنْهَوْنَ. This ayah is actually a very comprehensive ayah in terms of Quranic wisdom. The ayah we're about to study. This subject matter, it comes up 3 times in the Quran, once here, then we're going to see it in Surah Al-Shura, we're going to also see it in Surah Al-Qamar. And the subject matter is a sense of proportion. A sense of proportion in good and evil deeds. The idea, this fundamental idea is, in our religion, there are some big things we're supposed to just stay away from. Cheating in business, lying, riba, violating the rights of parents, the prayers, zakat. There are some fundamentals where we have to abide by. You have to do them, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about them. Then there are things that are tahseen, they make you a better person. Right? And you shouldn't have them because they're character flaws. Maybe once in a while you kind of end up saying something that's ghiba. It's not that ghiba is a small thing, it's a big thing. But regardless, it slips out without a person realizing it sometimes. Maybe a little bit of a white lie here and there. Just to get out of trouble. Smaller things. Maybe somebody didn't make their wudu properly. Maybe they were in a hurry or something. Maybe somebody wasn't paying attention in salat. These are day-to-day transgressions. Maybe somebody didn't lower their eyes right away. Right? They saw something and they didn't lower their eyes right away. And they were tempted to look again, etc. These are things that can happen on a daily basis. Well, there's a sense of proportion. The first priority in the life of a Muslim is to take care of the big problems. إِن تَجْتَنِبُوا كَبَائِرَ مَا تُنْهَوْنَ. if you are to ward yourselves away from the major of what you've been forbidden from, the big stuff you got to get out of the way. And then a daily struggle, once those are constants, like you wouldn't even think about the big stuff. Right? That's you've protected yourself from those things so well that you don't have to worry about that from a day-to-day basis. Now what can you concern yourself with? The smaller things. That are the smaller crimes that are easily committed. Now you can focus your attention on those. Now this is a good sense, a healthy sense of proportion. But what happens when there's a corrupted sense of proportion? A fasiq proportion sense. Then a person they won't give their daughter their inheritance, and they're not going to pay the mahar to their wife, and they're going to continue to earn money from questionable sources of income, but they'll go to Hajj every year. But they're going to donate lots of money to the Hifz program at the masjid. But every time they come into Salah, they say, hey, your pants are too low. Your beard's not long enough. And they'll be ready for that immediately. But the big stuff, right under the nose, just slips right out. Right? There's an Urdu expression, I won't translate it into Urdu, I'll just give you the English version of it. It's talking about a stupid hunter. The stupid hunter spent the day running after the mosquito while the elephant escaped. Right? Sense of proportion, buddy. So what happens is when and especially this is a criminal psychology, right? If you're really engaged in big sin, then you don't want to face that. You want to rationalize away from that. So you concern yourself with smaller deeds and make them your religion. That just becomes this is everything there is in religion. Everything else that you're violating, you conveniently forget about, never even bring up. إِن تَجْتَنِبُوا كَبَائِرَ مَا تُنْهَوْنَ عَنْهُ نُكَفِّرْ عَنْكُمْ سَيِّئَاتِكُمْ. Then we will bury away from you your sins. You can't keep doing your kaba'ir. Now what sayyi'at is the day-to-day mistakes. Sayyi'at is the rest. إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتِ يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ. Good deeds get rid of bad deeds. They remove bad deeds. That's what's left on a day-to-day. The adhkar, the salawat, the salam to one another, the smiling, the sadaqah. These things will get rid of the smaller mistakes that we do, that we're supposed to be working on anyway. But the kaba'ir have to be dealt with ahead of time, the big ones. وَنُدْخِلْكُمْ مُدْخَلًا كَرِيمًا. And, Allah adds on top of that, the fact that you were staying away from those sins, and you were worrying about getting your smaller sins forgiven. A sinful person is also humiliated. Allah says, we will enter you into a place of entering that is noble itself. Only noble people enter through there. The entrance itself is nobility. Karima, it's noble. So, نُدْخِلْكُمْ مُدْخَلًا كَرِيمًا وَلَا تَتَمَنَّوا. Another very important social sense of proportion. Allah Azza wa Jal created us differently, all of us. We have different heights, different weights, different ethnicities, different races, different intellectual capacities, different skills, different flaws. We all are just completely different. And most psychological problems people have, like depression, sadness, aggression, things like that, they come from them comparing themselves to others. Why couldn't I be taller? How come I'm so fat? That one's not fat at all. How come this one's so smart, I'm so stupid? How come they did this and I couldn't do that? This happens at the smallest scale. Some kid's sitting in a Hifz program memorizing Quran. Some kid finished 2 juz in a month, the other kid's just finishing half a juz. Like, how come I can't be like that? I hate myself. And then parents don't help, right? They say too, why can't you be like that? Right? They don't help either. But there's this, constant comparison of yourself to a coworker, to a fellow peer, a student, a cousin, a sister, a brother, someone else in school, an athlete. Constantly comparing yourself to somebody and then feeling bad about, I don't have what they have. Man, if only I was taller. If only I was this or that. These things, they can become a real burden on a person. Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَلَا تَتَمَنَّوْا. Don't wish for. مَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بِهِ بَعْضُكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. What Allah favored some of you with. What Allah has favored some of you with over others, or with others. Over others. Some of you are far smarter. You may be hard to look at, but you're far smarter. Some of you are very, very good looking, but you're dumb as a brick. It happens. Right? So there's different proportions. Allah Azza wa Jal wants you to not wish for what somebody else has. He just wants you to